Hello, everyone, and we all ready? Thank you all for being here. Do we have the Spanish media here? Yes. Okay, I'll do everything in English first, and then we'll go over the Spanish media, and then we'll take questions and answers. Just want to thank everyone for being here. I'm Sheriff Lopez, Osceola County Sheriff. Behind me are some of the detectives who worked on one of the worst child abuse cases in the history of Osceola County that any of us up here have ever seen. And we have a veteran detective here who had never seen anything like this, what we're about to talk about today. I want to warn you, the facts I'm about to talk about are hard to hear, and the images are difficult to see. The two people that are on the screens are responsible for the brutal murder of a 6-year-old child and the abuse of their 5 other siblings. These two suspects brought their family to Osceola County in March of this year. They rented a room, a hotel, the Knights Inn. It's located on the west side of our county on 192. There were a total of 8 people staying in this one room. 2 were the parents and 6 were the children. The kids were not in school. They had no friends here. The parents had no close relatives in the immediate area. These kids were isolated in this hotel room. I'll show you a photo of that. That's where they were all. That's the room that they were in. That's the scene that we came up to. We first encountered the child. Is how our agency got involved. On July 5th, we received a 911 call from the mother. She called saying that her 6-year-old son was drinking water out of the toilet and drowned. Deputy Miranda was the first to respond to the scene. When he arrived, he saw that 6-year-old child who was not breathing at the time. He immediately started performing CPR on the child until the paramedics arrived. The child was transported to the hospital where he was placed on life support for life-threatening injuries. Throughout our investigation, it was learned the child was drinking from the toilet, but that had nothing to do with why he wasn't breathing. The reason he wasn't breathing was because his parents got very angry because he was drinking out of the toilet, so they started to beat him. First, the mother beat him. Then the father started repeatedly punching this little boy with a closed fist. He punched him multiple times to the head, to the stomach area, to this little 6-year-old child. It was determined that he suffered a brain bleed and a lacerated liver. The little boy unfortunately passed away a few days later. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and abdomen. We arrested both parents yesterday for murder, and they were arrested that day on the scene for neglect. But yesterday, we charged them both with murder and arrested them on that charge. I have learned also that just a few hours ago, the state attorney's office also has officially charged both parents with murder. The little boy was our primary focus when we first arrived on scene. However, it was immediately clear that the other children in the hotel room were also the victims of child abuse. You could tell they were abused simply by looking at them. They also looked malnourished. They're all very small framed children and underweight according to their ages. All the kids had bruises, cuts, and marks on their tiny little bodies. On several of the kids, there was markings that had a distinct pattern. During the investigation, we learned that their parents would send them to the corner of the hotel room and beat them with the bottom of a shoe. We were able to match the markings on their bodies with the imprint of the shoe. Show here. And that there tested presumptive positive for blood. Okay? It was horrible. Imagine that, being beat so much that, blood is being left on the bottom of a shoe. There was blood splatter found on the corner, as well in the bathroom, on the walls, on the bed, and on the children's clothing. We have selected several photos that are least graphic. We're going to share with you today. We're not going to show their faces. We'll start with LR. LR is the 5-year-old. he had the following injuries: abrasion on the right forehead and nose, bruising on his shoulder that extended to his neck, circular abrasions to his left wrist. JR is the 4-year-old. Look at this. Imagine the first 4 years of your life and looking like this. He hasn't even begun to live. He had bruising on his mouth, forehead, upper chest, left cheek, jawline, left neck, left temple. He had abrasions on his lower lip and jaw. There were so many you could even count them. The abrasions on his chest, abdomen, and back. He had healing abrasions on his hand and had marks on his knee and both arms. He also had displaced clavicle fracture, okay? And he's still walking around, you know, and it's just amazing that we caught these kids, and none of the other ones were able to meet the same fate as their older brother. LR is a 2-year-old. There's a set of twins. She had abrasions on her right temple, marks on her chest, bruise on her back and thigh. ZR is her twin sister. She had bruising on her cheekbone, lower back, buttocks, thigh, abrasions to her left eye and right neck. And then LR is a 10-month-old, little one. He had a hemorrhage of the left lateral eye, bruising in his left eye, bruised to his left cheek, mouth, and chin, abrasions on his back and ankle. In addition to the murder charges, I've learned that the state attorney's office also has charged both parents with aggravated manslaughter of a child, aggravated child abuse, and 5 counts of child neglect. The surviving children have been obviously been removed from their current situation when this occurred, and they're in foster care right now, doing very well from what I've been told. I just want to thank everyone who was involved in this case. Fire rescue, paramedics, the child protection team, DCF, the state attorney's office, and of course our detectives right here, our forensic units, the investigators who spent so many hours putting this case together so these kids can get justice. Do you want me to go over the whole thing in Spanish, or do you want me to just answer questions in Spanish? It's up to you. Okay. Te voy a dar algo breve. En marzo, esta familia, 2 padres y 6 niños, se mudaron para el área de Osceola County y estaban quedando en un hotel. Total de 8 personas que se estaban quedando en un cuarto. Cuando nosotros recibimos la llamada julio 5, que la mamá llamó diciendo que el hijo estaba bebiendo agua del toilet y se había ahogado. Nosotros, lógicamente, vamos a investigar esto. Tan raro que un nene tan grande se va a ahogar en un toilet. Y empezamos a investigar el caso y investigamos que el niño él estaba inconsciente cuando llegó los oficiales y no era porque estaba ahogado, era pues, inconsciente porque aparentemente le habían dado golpes muy fuertes. La mamá confesó que ella le dio unos golpes primero y después el papá le dio los restos de golpes, que puso el niño inconsciente, tenía muchas heridas internas, internamente estaba sangrando. En ese día arrestamos a los padres, en ese momento, por otros cargos, pero después que la investigación se acabó, lo arrestamos a los 2 por asesinato a los 2 niños. Y los otros niños también que estaban en la residencia, como vieron en la foto, tenían heridas y lo estaban abusando de ellos también. No estaban comiendo bien, estaban malnutridos. Y ahora los 2 están en la cárcel y le dieron los cargos de asesinato a los 2 padres. Y le damos gracias a todos los detectives que están envueltos en este caso para asegurar que estos niños reciben justicia. Okay, question. English first. Got it.
Would you mind just clarifying the charges again for each ladies press charges against the gender for abuse as well?
Well, what we did that day, we charged them with neglect. Both of them. They were arrested. The mother didn't have much of a criminal history or any criminal history that I'm aware of. The father had a minor criminal history. She bonded out. He didn't. And later on, as the investigation was complete and all the pieces were put together after interviewing the children, you know, they were charged with manslaughter and we have other charges that the state attorney charged them with and I can have all that for you. But the two main charges were murder. Yes, the mother and the father.
Sheriff, you're certainly very emotional when you're talking about this. You said that one of your detectives said it was the worst case of child abuse?
Yes. She has been a detective here for 19 years, and she's never seen anything like this. And I've been here since 2003, and I've never seen anything like this. But these are the detectives that, with homicide and persons crimes, they investigate these things all the time, these type of cases. And when they sit here and tell you that they've never seen anything like this, they've pretty much seen it all. And this lady right here, she's been in CID for how many years now? 19 years. There you go. So, you know, pretty much her whole career, she's been looking at things like this, and this is one of the worst ones she's ever seen.
Sheriff, I forgive you for being so obvious, but why was it the worst case?
We've just, you want to explain that a little bit? You've investigated a bunch of them. One, we have a death, and then, come on.
The death and then the injuries you're seeing were actually kind of mild. There were injuries on the child, like you said, too many to count even. Injuries on the butt, like things that we can't show you because it's just too traumatizing. It's traumatizing for us to have seen them, and we have experience. So just dead skin cells from being hurt so badly, just horrible, horrible injuries on all of the children. So 10 months to 5 years old were the surviving children. So not only their age, but the extent of injuries that they had.
Sheriff, and all the children are both the couple? They're
Yes, they're all the biological children of both
So
parents.
this happened in a hotel room. They had been living there since March. You'd think that maybe someone could have heard something extreme, loud screaming and crying from these children being beaten, but did no other call come before that July 4th or 5th phone call that the mom made?
No. And we actually talked to neighbors. They just didn't hear them crying. They said they heard a thud, a thump the day of that incident. They said they wouldn't even see these kids outside. So these kids pretty much weren't even known to exist in this place because, you know, they were always out of sight. So, you know, my only thing I can think of is they were beaten so much to the point where, you know, you're not crying anymore. That's the only thing I can think of. And that's probably why no one heard or saw anything.
¿En qué estado los encontraron? ¿Recibieron entonces atención médica?
Uno inconsciente que falleció un par de días después en el hospital y los otros estaban abusados que, viste, las marcas, los golpes que habían recibido en diferentes, algunos golpes eran más viejos que otros. Next.
Sheriff, does this break your heart?
Of course, I have a child. You know, imagine being born and you can't reach adulthood, or you end up living as long as that poor little boy did, who's 6. And, you know, it's just, you're not even almost to your teenage years, and you're just being beat up your whole life. You know, these people are savages. You know, I just can't think. The 10-month-old was already on the same path. Was he going to make it to 6? So we got here right in time. Unfortunately, not on time to prevent his death, but throughout that thorough investigation we did once this was brought to our attention, we were able to take these kids from these monsters, and hopefully they'll never see these people again. And hopefully when they do go to trial, they get a hefty sentence.
Sheriff, where did they move from?
They were from Fort Myers, South Florida.
And what's their demeanor now? Are they still denying the allegations?
Well, you know, without getting into details of the investigation, you know, they start the kind of the blame game, or I wasn't aware of this, or I wasn't aware of that, or I did do this, but I didn't do that. You know, but their stories didn't match up. She was lying from the beginning, saying that this kid drowned in a toilet. I mean, it's just physically impossible for his body to, you know, as big as he was, to drown in a toilet. So, you know, right off the bat, they're lying, and shame on her. She's the mother that gave birth to these 6 kids, and, you know, and she put herself in this predicament, and she didn't do something before. So she's just as guilty.
And Sheriff, what time did the child succumb to his injuries?
It was a few days later. I don't have the exact time.
And also, you mentioned that you guys were able to identify that they got mad because the children were drinking from the toilet. Did any of the children tell any of the investigators that they were being hit by the parents, and that's the reason why?
The 4 and the 5-year-old were the ones that were able to speak, and give out enough information through that CPT investigation and give details of what happened. So they're pretty much our best witnesses and why this case is as detailed as it is now and why it's gone in this direction.
Algo así, ¿cómo ha afectado esto en español a sus detectives y pasó?
Perdóname, repite la primera
¿Cómo ha
parte.
afectado esto a sus detectives a cargo del caso y cuál es el mensaje para, ojalá y que no esté sucediendo en ningún otro rincón del condado, pero
Tú sabes que nuestros detectives desafortunadamente van a ver estos tipos de incidentes todos los días. Nosotros tenemos a Nancy Rosado, es our mental health outreach coordinator, y ella ahora está aquí para dar apoyo. Ella aparece en ese tipo de escenas. So, tú sabes, con ese apoyo que tenemos ahora y hablando con los oficiales después que de escenas así, va a mejorar. Y el mensaje que yo le digo a la gente que, tú sabes, muchas veces nosotros no podemos llegar a esta gente antes de ellos cometer estos actos tan feos. Pero tú sabes que si tú eres una persona que ves algo, oyes algo, es tu obligación. Si tú eres una mujer que está abusada, habla, di algo y te va a buscar la ayuda. What he asked was, are some of our detectives affected by this? And of course they are. We're all affected by this. You know, eventually kids grow up, and if they do survive these type of environments, you know, they end up adults. You know, and we got to break these bad patterns and cycles of behavior that some parents are just putting onto these kids. And we do have a mental health outreach coordinator for our agency, Nancy Rosado, who's been a blessing, and she came on board to help us. And she goes to our critical incidents. She talks to them, and she helps them get that off their chest. And that's been a blessing because a lot of times we take these things in, and people don't realize that this is what we see every single day. We're human beings just like anybody else. So, you know, we also need that family and peer support.
How are the kids doing now, and what's the age range of all of them?
It was from 6, the one who passed, to 10 months, all the way down.
Are they together with the?
Yes, they're in one foster home right now. They're doing really well.
they were never in school because they got here in March.
Not in school, no. Wait, you speak English? Just kidding. Joe. I know he does.
The date a few days later, is there any way we can narrow that down?
I mean, if you look at we responded on July 5th, I'd guess 7th, 8th maybe.
Gotcha, and that still puts us a month from today. The murder charges you said
Yes.
came yesterday, so was that as a result of a month-long investigation?
Well, what happens is, you know, we need to wait for the CPT investigations on children. They're little. We want to take our time. We want to make sure we put together a good case for prosecution. You know, we're also waiting results from the MEs and anything else that's coming in to help us put together a solid case. Anybody could arrest somebody for murder, but you know, when it's a case like this, we want to make sure we arrest them and it's a solid case. It goes to prosecution, and these people pay for their crime. So on something like this, you definitely want to take a little bit of time and make sure everything is put together and all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed.
What was the hotel this time?
Sorry?
The name of the hotel?
Nights Inn on West 192. It's like in our west side of the county.
Sheriff, are they in jail with no bond?
Now they will be in jail, no bond. Yes.
And, I'm sorry, they're facing charges of murder or?
Murder. The state attorney also charged them with, if I can find my little paper here. They have also been charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child, aggravated child abuse, and 5 counts of child neglect.
Sheriff, would you mind if I ask your lead detective one more question?
Of course, come on up. Do you mind?
Yes, I'm not the lead detective,
Oh.
just,
Okay,
but yes,
okay.
ma'am.
The most experienced detective.
I don't know about that.
Does it break your heart?
Oh, working these cases has chipped away at my soul for a long time now, so, yes, it was very hard for all of us.
Were there any priors in Lee County with this couple?
For the mother, no. The father had a minor criminal history. I don't have the exact details of it, but it wasn't something that involved in child abuse.
Sheriff, you indicate that both parents inflicted the physical abuse. How do we come out to that conclusion?
Because you have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old that were interviewed, and they can talk. And they're the ones that, that's how this case all got put together. They're the ones that told the story, on top of everything else that we had. You know, one's dead because he drowned, but then his internal bleeding, ruptured spleen. I mean, the injuries that he received aren't from a drowning. It's obviously from blunt trauma. So, you know, and then the 2 children that were able to speak and help us put this together.
Sheriff, the coroner has confirmed that it was not death by drowning, but
Of course, yes, blunt trauma.
Would you say he was beat to death?
Well, he was still alive when he left. So I don't say he was beat to death. He died a few days later. But he was beat to the point where it caused him to die.
Y estaban pasando hambre, obviamente estaban en una...
Well, yeah, ellos se veían malnutridos, they looked malnutritioned. It doesn't look like they were being very well taken care of or anything like that.
So he could have been drinking water, maybe dehydrated.
You know, like I said, maybe he was thirsty, he went to the toilet, and he was just trying to survive. And, you know, mama caught him. And the poor little guy paid the price.
Did they have food there? Like, did they have?
They had some food, nothing major. They didn't have a lot in the room.
And were they employed at the time?
I don't know if they were working or not. But there's no excuse. You know, you can go get welfare food, say whatever you need, especially if you have children. They will give you something. We have food drive. We have so many things, especially here in Osceola County, that are available to people who are in need. So, you know, it's just one of those bizarre cases that, you know, we're all stumped, and it shouldn't happen. All right? All right. Thank you all. Thank you.